Trash carpeted my lake like a crime scene. Paint cans and busted tires bobbed where I used to fish with my dad, catching largemouth before sunrise and swapping the same stories we told 100 times. I stood in my base boat staring at a surface that didn't look like water anymore. It looked like a dump. The rotten, chemical stink didn't belong here. Nothing made sense. Then, from across the water, Paula appeared on the Meadowbrook clubhouse lawn with her phone held high, yelling that I was the one who did it. My stomach dropped. I was still trying to find my voice when the sheriff's lights threw red and blue across the trash bags, turning this quiet Texas lake into something that looked like a parade for all the wrong reasons. Would you have kept calm, or would you have lost it? I'll be honest, my hand was shaking. But if you grow up on a ranch in Texas, you learn one rule early. When you got the truth, you document it and hold the line. I'd launched from our family dock a little after sunrise, like I've done 1,000 times since Dad taught me to cast when I was 12. From the shoreline, everything looked normal. That dark green color of a healthy, spring-fed lake. Cypress stumps punched clean silhouettes through the mist. But when I cut the motor near my favorite morning spot, the smell hit first, a sharp, oily bite that didn't belong to fish, mud, or anything God put in this water. I drifted closer. It was worse than I imagined. Trash stretched from cove to cove. Old tires, plastic bottles, paint cans, broken buckets, chunks of construction debris, even stained sheets of gypsum board and PVC fittings. This wasn't the slow accretion of litter blown in from a roadside. This was a deliberate dump. I could feel in my bones. I've been fishing this lake since childhood. I know every inlet, every drift, every snarl of lily pads that snag a spinnerbait. Nothing like this just happens overnight. Someone backed up a truck and tipped it, or worse, a series of trips in the dark. I took out my phone and started recording, panning across the water to capture the scope of it. Close-ups of labels on paint cans, the slick rainbow sheen where oil met sun, beer cans caught in reeds. I narrated the time and the wind, the direction of the drift, exactly like Dad taught me when we kept fishing logs. The words sounded flat in my throat. This wasn't just environmental pollution. It was personal. It was my family's lake, our ranch's water. It was our childhood. That's when I heard the hum. A steady mechanical thrum coming from across the lake, Meadowbrook Subdivision's pump station. On paper, we share utility easement. They irrigate with water pulled from our private spring-fed lake under a very specific agreement. In practice, it's a gleaming white box on the far bank with pipes dipped like straws into our water. I eased the outboard on low and glided in closer. The hum ran like a metronome, on, off, in a way that told me it wasn't manual. It was on a timer. I checked my watch, 6:15 a.m., right on schedule. Every morning at dawn, those pumps kick on for exactly 20 minutes. Draw thousands of gallons, and send it under the road to water Meadowbrook's pristine lawns. Perfect emerald grass, HOA letters about yard health, and sprinklers glistening before the school bus. Before, I didn't think much about it. Standard irrigation. But watching plastics and chemical slicks jump and sparkle in the morning light, while the pump hummed and sucked made the hypocrisy land in my gut. They were irrigating with water from the same lake, now fouled with floating garbage. I pulled nearer to the pump house to film the setup. From 20 yards, it looked compliant. Fresh paint. The new pad poured last summer, neatly labeled pipes. Up close, the corners looked cut. Hairline cracks in the concrete, patched with something that didn't match. Dried, rusty streaks near the lower coupling. And then I saw the inspection tag screwed to the main panel. In Texas, both water intake and irrigation systems require current tags for compliance, and those tags are color-coded by year. The tag on their panel was faded and sun-bleached 2 cycles behind. A vehicle registration left out in the sun. I zoomed in and held the frame until the numbers were clear enough to read back home. Paula must have spotted me from the clubhouse windows because she came storming across the manicured lawn. If confidence had a gait, hers was it. She has a way of walking like she owns everything she can see, including my family's ranch lake that existed before Meadowbrook, with even blue lines on a developer's plan. "What are you doing out there?" she shouted, voice ringing over the water. "Did you dump all that trash in our water source?" Our water source. That part landed like a slap. Funny, last I checked, the deed didn't carry her name. I held my phone up and kept recording. Interesting how your pump keeps running from my ranch lake while you're accusing me of dumping garbage. I called back. She flipped her phone open with theatrical force. 911. She said loud enough for the morning dog walkers. I need to report someone dumping trash in our community water supply. He's right there in his boat, probably disposing of more evidence. I felt my jaw clench so tight it hurt. She was trying to frame me for polluting a lake my family had tended and guarded for generations. But this is Texas ranch country. We keep records. We keep boundaries. We keep our patience, at least until a deputy shows up. 20 minutes later, a Caldwell County deputy rolled up by the clubhouse. Paula planted herself at the water's edge, finger pointing so hard her shoulders shook. The deputy waved me in. When my hull touched the dock, he was polite but firm. "Sir, tell me what you observed." I showed him everything. The video of floating trash as far as my camera could see, close-ups of the debris, and the faded inspection tag on Meadowbrook's pump panel, captured from multiple angles. I handed over a thumb drive with copies. He listened, asked precise questions, and didn't bite when Paula tried to interrupt. "Ma'am," he said finally, turning to her, "what this gentleman is showing me is evidence of illegal dumping. And according to our records, this lake is on his property." Paula flushed red. "He doesn't have authority over our intake station. I demand you cite him for illegal dumping." He looked at her like she told him to arrest a fence post. "This is an HOA matter on your side. Environmental dumping's a county issue. We'll open an incident report and refer it to environmental health. If there's an intake violation, they'll handle inspection and compliance. I'll be calling my attorney," I added evenly, given the confusion about boundaries and those threats on my easement. "See," Paula pounced. "He's lawyering up. He knows he's guilty." "Ma'am," the deputy said, patience slipping, "anyone deal with property disputes is wise consult an attorney." Her face tightened like a knot on a rope. She wasn't used to being told no. She pressed him for a citation on the spot. But environmental cases require trained inspectors, not gut feelings and HOA memos. The deputy finished his report, gave me a card, noted the expired tag in his log, and left. Paula stood rigid on the shoreline, fury radiating through pearl earrings. The next morning, before sunrise, my neighbor pulled into the ranch. He's been my fishing buddy 15 years, and my closest ally longer than that. He worked 2 decades as an insurance adjuster, which means he documents like his life depends on it. "Grant," he said, meeting me on the dock and tapping the brim of his cap toward the shoreline, "you need to see this." Bright yellow signs had sprouted overnight along my easement. N.O. dumping. Restricted shoreline. Authorized personnel only. They weren't handwritten. These were commercial prints. The kind an HOA orders in bulk. Judging by the placement, somebody had walked my property line with a hammer and no permission. One sign was nailed so close to our family dock it rattled with every ripple. My blood pressure spiked so hard I felt it in my gums. That easement is recorded with Caldwell County and goes back to my grandfather. It's in black ink and embossed with a county seal. My neighbor began shooting photos from multiple angles, latitude and longitude included. He's shown me a thing or two over the years about how photos stand up in hearings. I called my property attorney, a man who has shepherded our family's legal affairs since I was in high school. I told him about the dumping, the expired tag, Paula's accusation, and now the signs on my side of the water. He listened quietly, which is how I know he's measuring the whole field. "Grant," he said at last, voice like a level over a nail, "the HOA has zero authority over your ranch property or your water rights. None. Posting signs on your recorded easement? That's trespass. It's also harassment if it's meant to intimidate you off your own shoreline. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Document everything. I'll need copies." While we were still on the line, my neighbor walked back from the mailbox with a certified envelope raised like a flag. "Official mail," he said. I opened it and felt a mix of anger and disbelief I imagine most folks feel the first time a bureaucracy lies to their face on letterhead. It was a violation notice from Meadowbrook HOA signed by Paula, citing me for failing to maintain shoreline cleanliness and contributing to waste accumulation in community water resources. It demanded I cease all fishing activities immediately and remove my dock within 30 days or face escalating fines and legal action. I read it aloud into the phone. My attorney asked for a scan. Legally meaningless, he said. But this is a pattern. Don't take the bait. Instead of fighting with an HOA board that doesn't know where the authority ends, we request a compliance inspection of their intake under Texas Water Code. If their system is running without a current tag or is contributing to contamination, County Environmental Health will document it. We deal with facts, not threats. That's exactly what I did. I filed a request with County Environmental Health for a full compliance inspection of the Meadowbrook pump station and intake under Texas Water Code Authority. They promised an on-site assessment within 48 hours. In the meantime, I started my own documentation of their irrigation schedule. Every morning at 6:15 a.m., the pump kicked on for exactly 20 minutes. I recorded the hum. I filmed the glint of water surging through the pipe. I pointed a laser line at a dock post to measure the daily drop. That pump was pulling thousands of gallons from a private spring-fed lake to water lawns, while the HOA tried to push me off my own shoreline with bogus warnings. The audacity still takes my breath away when I think about it. I emailed Paul about the signs and copied the HOA board. The reply came back minutes later, brisk and defensive. Meadowbrook systems meet all Texas requirements. Your fishing activities pose potential dumping risks the board cannot ignore. No mention of why those signs were on my property. No answer on the expired tag. Just more bluster and claims she had no right to make. My attorney and I spoke again that evening. They're counting on you not knowing your rights, he said, or not wanting to spend the time to enforce them. Don't give them that satisfaction. You've got property rights, recorded easements, and water law on your side. By Wednesday, the lake had made Meadowbrook's tidy edges look bad. Families gathered by the pump house, voices pitching up in the way people get when their routines are threatened. Parents were holding water bottles to the light, like they were looking for poison. Irrigation had run that morning, and their sprinklers had spit bottle caps, flimsy plastic wrappers, and oily rainbows sheen onto driveways and yards where kids play hopscotch and chalk out stars. The smell reached me on my side, a mixture of paint thinner and rot that belongs nowhere near children. A woman I didn't know called me after finding my recording online. She was polite the way you are when you're trying not to cry. Mr. Grant, I'm a Meadowbrook resident. We have trash coming out of our sprinklers. Paula keeps saying you caused it. Can you come explain what's actually happening? It didn't take 10 seconds for me to decide. I grabbed a binder with my easement documents, the inspection request, and my timeline and drove around. 20-odd people were gathered by the pump house by the time I arrived, mostly young families. Their faces weren't angry yet. They were worried. That change in the crowd's eyes is something you don't forget. Paula moved fast to control the stage. This is the man I told you about, she announced, pointing. He's been dumping trash in our water source. I held up a hand. Let me show you where your irrigation water actually comes from, I said, pointing across the lake to the line of cypress in my family's fence. Right there. That pump you hear humming pulls from my ranch lake. It has for years. Every morning at 6:15. Some turned like they were seeing it for the first time. A dad started live streaming. I opened my binder. Here's the easement recorded with Caldwell County. This is my family's property and my family's water. I'm not your community water source. You are a user under a specific agreement. The live stream camera zoomed in on the county seal and the notary stamp. It wasn't a political argument anymore. It was a document. Parents looked at the papers, then at the pump, then at the rainbow puddles on their sidewalks. What does that mean for our water safety? A father asked, shifting a toddler on his hip. Are we watering our lawns with polluted water? Irrigation is separate from tap water. Paula cut in quickly. Drinking water is safe. She rattled off connections and flow paths that sounded like a manual, but she couldn't steady her voice. The more technical she got, the less reassured the parents looked. She made calls on speaker where everyone could hear. First to the sheriff, accusing me of trespassing and of inciting panic. Then to her attorney, talking loudly about restraining orders and defamation. The threats fell flat in the face of bottle caps in children's hands. Residents started demanding an emergency HOA board meeting for water testing, straight answers, and accountability. When Paula tried to order everyone to disperse, they didn't move. The evidence was soaking their grass. What truly cracked the dam was when she accused me of trespass while I stood on a shared easement my family holds on paper. I held up the easement map. "You can be mad at me," I said, "but you can't rewrite records." The mood shifted. Paula's authority had always worked in small rooms and form letters. It didn't stand up to daylight and GPS. By Thursday evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Grant," a man said, voice careful. "Name's Mike. I used to do maintenance for Meadowbrook. I saw the videos. We need to talk." We met at the diner. He had the look of a man with more work than pride left in his hands. Calluses deep enough to read like tree rings. He stirred coffee like it was buying him time. "I quit 6 months ago," he said, eyes flicking to the door. "Paula asked me to move trash around your side, target where you fish. Said it was to discourage fishing activity and improve shoreline appearance." He studied my face. At first, I thought she had some kind of county authority. But then she wanted heavier stuff. Construction debris, paint containers, oil barrels. She told me not to worry about environmental impact. Said fishing was going to be eliminated anyway. My stomach nodded. Eliminated. Like 30 years of family fishing rights were a math problem she could solve with garbage. She didn't know I had remote access to the pump station cameras, he said, tapping a tablet awake. Insurance required we install them for liability. They record nights, too. He opened a clip and handed me the screen. 3:15 a.m. Paula, alone at the water's edge, flashlight in her teeth, hauling black garbage bags and heavy containers toward a lake. She rolled a barrel that glistened with dark, viscous leak down the last 4 feet and shoved it hard enough that the splash showed bright in infrared. Then she kicked lighter trash outward toward the cypress stumps where I fish, like she was painting with pollution, directing it to tell the right lie. I asked about the chemicals. Mike said, "She told me to keep my mouth shut and stop being difficult." Fired me 2 days later. While we spoke, his phone buzzed. He glanced and went pale. "Meadowbrook's insurance carrier," he said. "They're calling everyone." He picked up, listened, answered questions about maintenance logs. And when he hung up, he looked tired in the way a man looks when he's been holding a heavy truth. "They're sending an investigator tomorrow. Environmental dumping cases can bankrupt an association. Intentional acts void coverage." The investigator showed up Friday morning while I filmed the newest wave of trash corralling itself in our cove. Gray suit, no nonsense, camera and clipboard in hand. The sort of professional who makes people nervous because you know she's been told, "Just make it go away," and didn't listen. She introduced herself as working for Meadowbrook's liability carrier and asked to review my footage and documentation. I walked her through the timeline, the pump schedule, the expired tag, and the clips from Mike's cameras showing Paula's 3:15 a.m. maintenance. She didn't interrupt. She took notes like a surgeon planning a cut. "Intentional dumping by board members is excluded from coverage," she said finally, professional calm wrapped over a hard core of alarm. "We take this very seriously. If there was environmental damage, and from what I've seen there is, coverage would be suspended pending investigation. Potential criminal referral as well. We'll need copies." She interviewed Mike separately. He had maintenance logs contradicting Paula's claims about certified contractors and emergency response. When the investigator returned, her expression told me what I needed to know before she spoke. "Coverage suspended pending full investigation," she said. "Evidence points to systematic environmental violations and falsified reports. We'll refer our findings to Texas Environmental Health and the district attorney." Paula didn't disappear. She attacked. She called Mike disgruntled, claimed the footage was taken out of context, said her actions were emergency cleanup in response to my pollution. But there was one problem even she couldn't talk around. The camera didn't lie. The timing, the barrels, the angle of her shoulders when she put her back into a heavy thing. That was dumping, not cleanup. Saturday morning, Meadowbrook held an emergency board meeting. The clubhouse was packed wall to wall. Parents held their kids close, not because of fire code limit, but because fear tightens hands. The investigator sat in front with a thick folder no one could stop glancing at. Paula came in looking like a storm on 2 feet. She scanned the room like it might move for her. It didn't. A board member opened with the letter everyone dreaded. Effective immediately, the association's liability insurance is suspended pending investigation into unauthorized waste dumping and environmental violations. The air changed. It wasn't theoretical anymore. Personal liability exposure are just words until you realize your savings and your house are in the blast radius of someone else's bad decisions. The investigator's presentation was clinical and devastating. She walked through dates, showed clips, matched maintenance logs against claims, then projected the midnight footage of Paula rolling barrels on the clubhouse wall. Gasps aren't something you hear often as an adult. You hear them when a lie breaks in public. Paula, a board member said finally, face powder with anger, "You told us waste was handled by certified contractors. You filed reports stating compliance. This footage shows you personally disposing of what appears to be industrial waste in the middle of the night without oversight or certification." Paula tried to talk over him. He lifted his hand and didn't look at her. "You have exposed the entire board to personal liability." She reached for the only defense she had left. "I was responding to contamination caused by Mr. Grant. Emergency protocols, mitigation, preventing further damage." If this was an emergency, another board member cut in, "Why didn't you notify county environmental authorities? Why lie in your reports? Why act at 3 a.m.? And where is your certification for hazardous waste handling?" She had none. The investigator explained to the room that under Texas Environmental Code, disposal of potentially hazardous materials requires specific training and licensing. The board's faces cycled through shock to anger to the early stages of panic. The insurance company's conditions were clear: removal of Paula from any operational role, cessation of all unauthorized dumping, implementation of certified procedures, compliance oversight. A motion to suspend Paula passed unanimously. They scheduled a vote for the following week to remove her as president. No one looked at her. She didn't look at anyone. But I watched her eyes. They weren't defeated. They were calculating. Folks like Paula don't go quietly. They wait for a different angle. Monday morning, the local news called. "Mr. Grant, I'm Rebecca." The reporter said, "Voice honed on truth and deadlines. We're investigating environmental dumping in East Texas. Residents have contacted us about contaminated irrigation water in Meadowbrook. Would you go on camera?" "Yes," I said. "I'm done with half-truths and HOA agendas." Rebecca arrived Tuesday with a camera crew and a nose for the real story. She filmed the floating trash, the oil sheen, my property lines, and the pump house churning the lake like it couldn't hear itself. Then she asked a question on everyone's mind. "So their entire subdivision irrigates from your private ranch lake, and their HOA try to ban you from fishing on your own shore while dumping industrial waste?" While her cameraman grabbed B-roll of the easement markers, her phone buzzed. She frowned and smiled at the same time. "Mr. Grant," she said, "did you know Paul applied for a $50,000 environmental restoration grant from the Texas Rural Development Authority 6 months ago?" She had the paper. It was a grant application for shoreline restoration and recreational facility development, using language like eliminating incompatible land uses and exclusive community access to water resources. It was all there: budget lines, milestones, deliverables. Buried in the criteria was the kicker: proof of elimination of existing land uses before restoration funds would be released. In legalese, that meant no fishing. The garbage wasn't random. It was a scheme: create an environmental problem, secure state money to restore the damage, then build premium lakefront amenities to make Meadowbrook even more exclusive. As if the lake had decided it was time to make a point. The sprinklers kicked on 2 hours early while the camera rolled. Trash-laced water sprayed into the air like a fountain designed by a cynic. Bottle caps pinging against driveway concrete. Paint chips glittering unwanted confetti in the morning sun. The footage required no voiceover. It explained itself. Rebecca confronted Paula on camera with the signed grant application. Paula tried to distance herself. That was just a preliminary inquiry. Rebecca held up the signed submission with dates and a tracking number. The lens caught all. The HOA president who tried to frame me as a polluter was now on camera as a would-be grant fraudster and the architect of our own environmental disaster. The segment aired Thursday night. It was as damning as footage gets. Texas Environmental Health issued an emergency cease operations order for Meadowbrook's pump station. The district attorney announced a criminal investigation into environmental violations and possible grant fraud. The insurer publicly confirmed suspension and hinted at civil recovery of investigation costs. The phones didn't stop ringing. Not mine, not Meadowbrook's, not the county's. By Friday morning, the state escalated. The county attorney, a water compliance specialist, and an inspector from Texas Environmental Health showed up at the pump station with a red placard and an order that sounded like thunder in legalese. Cease and desist. The inspector hammered the sign to the door. Operation suspended. Illegal dumping investigation, and read the order aloud. All pump operations halted. All waste disposal prohibited absent certified contractor oversight. All grant activity frozen pending fraud review. Paula was personally barred from equipment access. The Attorney General's office was evaluating. In Texas, that word is weight. That afternoon's HOA meeting was brief and final. Paula attended with an attorney and said almost nothing. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president, and then did something I didn't expect. They apologized. They admitted they'd allowed her to exceed authority, without oversight. They promised transparency and independent testing. Several members resigned, which in my book is the first honest act they performed. Legal consequences followed the facts. In court, Paula received 6 months probation for environmental dumping, for $1,000 in fines, and a requirement for community service in environmental education. She owed restitution for her cleanup costs, complete restoration of my ranch lake under state oversight, estimated at $15,000, plus $3,000 for water quality testing and ongoing monitoring, and administrative/legal costs that push her personal liability north of $22,000. The fraud investigation ended with a plea agreement, restitution to the Texas Rural Development Authority, and permanent disqualification from future grant applications. Cleanup began immediately. Certified contractors and waiters dragged out the same trash bags I'd filmed, heaped tires onto flatbeds, siphoned iridescent slicks from backwaters, and set up monitoring equipment to track recovery. Parents watched from the Meadowbrook side with crossed arms and tight jaws while the last of the oil sheen evaporated. Week by week, the water lost its stink. Sunfish nosed the shallows again. Dragonflies came back. I slipped my boat off the dock one quiet morning and cast toward the shade line I've always believed in. The strike, when it came, felt like forgiveness. The new HOA board sat down with me to draft a cooperative agreement that properly acknowledged my property rights, easement access, and extended their irrigation use under Texas water law. They committed to certified contractors for all waste management, implemented real oversight for system maintenance, and adopted transparent reporting requirements. Independent labs conducted water quality testing. The results came back clean. Even the most skeptical parents let their kids run through sprinklers again. I got my lake back. Clean water, fish biting, cypress knees throwing their old familiar shadows. Paula didn't go to jail, but the weight of her own garbage dragged her to the bottom in a way that mattered. Fines, probation, lost position, and every neighbor knowing the truth. The community learned what happens when you let one person, any person, treat power like a personal grant and an HOA letterhead like a badge. If you're still with me, tell me this. If someone tried to turn your private lake into their personal water utility and framed you for their mess, what would you have done? Would you have blasted the footage online the second you got it, or held it back for court? Would you have confronted them face to face, or let the law do what it's designed to do, one documented fact at a time? For anyone dealing with something similar, here's what helped me. Document before you argue. File compliance requests under the law. Protect your property rights with actual records. Ask for independent water quality testing. Push for environmental inspection and a cease and desist order when warranted. Let insurance investigators do their job. Demand HOA accountability. And insist on certified contractors and legal oversight for anything touching your water. Those aren't just talking points. That's how we save a spring-fed Texas lake. Sometimes you don't need to swing harder. Sometimes you let the weight of their own trash pull them under. Drop your thoughts below. What would you have done if it was your shoreline? And if you found something in this story that made you shake your head, hit the thanks button or share it with someone who needs to hear it. Keep your lines tight, your camera rolling, and your neighbors honest.